This time I'll call the September 16th, 2024 County Council meeting to order. Our first item of business is the invocation and pledge of allegiance from the Honorable Tommy Atkins, District 3.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us all be here tonight. Lord, I hope that you'll grant us wisdom, knowledge about the people's business, and Lord, help us in our daily struggles as we try to serve you. Grant us all safe passage home. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everyone here tonight for our meeting. We appreciate you being here. We do not have any oath of office to address tonight. We do have a couple of appearances. Neil Brennan with the Lake Wylie Marine Commission to present the annual report.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chairman, council members. Neil Brennan, 1531 Reflection Point Boulevard in Belmont, North Carolina. Let's see, I got to figure out how to work this doodah here. Hey, our mission statement hasn't changed. Promote public policies and support regulations to preserve the lake and its wildlife and to educate the people and keep the folks safe who use this natural resource. I'm going to talk about these topics tonight, which you can see here. I won't go down them because I haven't got a lot of time, but we'll go ahead and get into it. Danger buoys and states, as I've told you before, we screen all the requisitions or applications for danger buoys on Lake Wylie and send them to the various states. In South Carolina, they either approve them or disapprove them. If they approve them, they place and maintain those danger buoys. In North Carolina, we likewise screen those applications, send them to the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. If they approve them, then we maintain and place them according to state law. River sweep's coming up here on the 5th of October. We graciously let the Catawba Riverkeeper relieve us of the responsibilities for organizing that big event, and it goes basin-wide now. We get funding from us, Lake Wylie Marine Commission, individuals and businesses, and they also provide materials, gloves, grabbers, bottled water, and so on, and the counties provide the dumpsters at the various sites around the lake. As far as water quality is concerned, we participate in the Catawba Riverkeeper program called Swim Guides. They go out and sample the water on a Thursday during the summer months from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and they look for any contamination, E. coli in particular. They promulgate that on Friday so people know where not to swim. And we've had, it's a pretty successful website. They've had over 14,000 hits on Lake Wylie this past season, so people know where to go and where not to go. We also get the water quality data every 2 months from the Charlotte Water Group. They go out and sample. You can see the different places where they sample the water and let us know what's good, bad, or indifferent on that. So if we need be, we can put out public service announcement or whatever. Law enforcement, life jackets, we send them out on the boats to all the law enforcement guys, so in case somebody comes up and doesn't have the right one, they can give them one. And we also, I think last year I showed you the chem lights that we gave to the people in case they're out over dark and their lights are no good, they can use these chem lights to get them back safely to shore. This year we also bought some stabilizing binoculars, which are pretty expensive, for the York County Sheriff's Office and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. So when you're bobbing around the boats, this thing will stabilize yourself. I didn't have that problem on a cruiser. It was pretty stable. But the Gaston County Police Boathouse, I've been talking to y'all about that for about, I don't know, 5-6 years now. Gaston County Police said, look, thanks very much for your input on that. We'd like to move it from where we thought we'd let it originally back up toward the bridge up at 74 and move it down to the new South Point swim area because there's more people down there. It'll be a better presence. So we voted to go ahead and comply with their request. So we're going to help fund that as we set that money aside back in 2019. I briefed you all a little while ago on a charter boat and rental vessel regulation. Now, we had to withdraw that because when I briefed Gaston County, they said, not so fast. There's a statement in the Constitution, North Carolina Constitution, that says the General Assembly shall not enact any local resolution that regulates trade. Well, rental boats are trade. And the attorney there gave us some case studies that said, I've been down this road before, and you can't do this. So, and it goes on to say, in that same section of the North Carolina Constitution, says, any local act that does that shall be void. Well, we had to withdraw that until we can figure out if this trumps the statement in the South Carolina and North Carolina law that says this commission can make regulations about anything about Lake Wylie. So there seems to be a conflict. We're trying to work through it. So in the meantime, as it says there, we're pursuing some other safety measures. And what we think we might be able to do is hang our hat on this insurance business. Personal watercraft insurance requirements are inconsistent between North and South Carolina. I gave you all a copy of a proposed regulation that we're drafting, and that's why it says draft on it. And we're working with Attorney Kendry here and the York County Sheriff's Office to make sure we're on good ground here to pursue this regulation. Because what we're trying to do is, in North Carolina, state law says if you want to rent a jet ski, personal watercraft to somebody, you've got to have insurance, and you have to provide that insurance to the rentee. Whoa. In South Carolina, the only thing it says, and you can see it there, both are liable. Well, that's pretty broad. So what we're attempting to do now is level the playing field and make the regulation consistent across all the waters of Lake Wylie, so that, and this regulation would do that, it just mimics what it says in North Carolina, kind of like we did last year with the idle speed laws. We just mimicked what South Carolina had on the books and put it in place for North Carolina. So we'll align the state laws for both. Now, I got an anecdote here given to me by one of the York County Sheriff's Office officers. They came across these guys who were renting these jet skis out of the back of a trailer. And they said, you can't do that because Duke has already given you a cease and desist about doing this. Well, the guy said, I'm sorry, we're letting these guys do this for free. We're just making them pay for the gas. Sure. Well, this will give the York County Sheriff's Office a little teeth. Now, before we go down this road, two things. I want to make sure, and I'm working with Mr. Kendry about this, to make sure we're not stepping on the insurance laws, and then also working with the York County Sheriff's Office to make sure they're okay with it. If we get everybody singing Kumbaya on this thing, then we'll go ahead with it. So that's where we stand on it. I give you a copy of the proposed regulation there at your desk. Again, just another tool for law enforcement that they can use to, a lot of these people are out there, they don't know what they're doing. They're renting unsafe jet skis, hardly any safety brief at all, whatever. At least we can use this part of the law to give them another tool. Sedimentation, I've said this before, it's a cancer on the lake. There are several areas of Lake Wylie and South Carolina waters that are silted up. People can't use their docks and so on. We've got that up in North Carolina. The South Fork River is particularly bad. Mecklenburg County has the strongest stormwater control measures in their ordinances. York County upgraded your ordinances in 2019, following some blowouts over on Bonham Road and one over in Torrance Creek. So Gaston County is kind of averse to implementing any additional regulations. So what we're trying to do, along with the Catawba Riverkeeper folks, is asking the municipalities to put this list of enhanced stormwater control measures in their own ordinances, with the idea if a developer wants to come and develop a plot of land, here are all the things you have to do. And if you don't think you need to do one, you can request a waiver from that. So, because maybe some inland development not near the water doesn't need to have a double high hazard silt fence, okay? So the city then will be able to do this. The reason we're doing this is because Gaston County, if somebody submits a plan that has the minimum requirements, it has to be accepted. So we're trying to jack this thing up so that we're at least somewhat closer to what you all have in York County. We'll see if that goes. We're working on that. Education, Citizens Water Academy meets online from January through March. There are several presentations about Lake Wylie, who owns it, how they control the level. We have a little bit on the Catawba Riverkeeper, and I usually give a presentation on the Marine Commission. We have a newsletter, we have our monthly meetings, except December, which are open to the public. We go to the boat show, River Vista in Belmont, they had a Fork Fest in McCaddenville. We put out all our propaganda, flyers and all that sort of thing. People know what we're doing. And our website has it too. In South Carolina, we have the Clean Marina program, which we took over years ago, both in North and South Carolina. I think I briefed you last year. North Carolina, the state has now taken that over. We're out of the business in North Carolina. In South Carolina, the people who are signed up for a Pier 88 Yacht Club, Marine Max, Lake Club Marina, the Commodore Yacht Club, and TGK Marina. And if we inspect them every 2 years, and if they meet the items that are listed here on the slide, we give them this fancy flag that they can fly. Again, keeping the water safe, water quality, safety. That's what we're about. Environment, hydrilla control. We've controlled hydrilla by inserting carp, sterile carp. And they bring in a big truck, like the one you see in the fish in the slide here. And they dump this stuff in the lake and it eats down the hydrilla. Now another one we got is alligator weed, and the only thing you can get rid of that is you have to have a certified chemical company come and put chemicals on it, or you can yank it out. I recommend yanking it out. At any rate, those are two. Now the one we got coming up here now, whoop, what happened? Not moving. Here we go. We have a new one. It's called Lingbia and Microceria walleye, whatever that is. It's an invasive species of cyanobacteria. It's pungent, it's toxic. It appears as mats that rise to the surface. This stuff forms on the lake bed, okay? And if they get enough nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, this stuff will break free from the lake bed and come up to the surface, and it looks like wet tobacco. You can see it there. Lake Gaston has had a problem with that back in 2021. They had 1,200 acres of it. Lake Norman, this is new to us. Lake Norman had 10 acres. They found it in 2023. Mountain Island has 20 acres. We got 4.5 acres. It's treated by a process that North Carolina State University has developed through a company called Aqua Services. They've used several different, I don't know why this thing had moved, folks. But anyway, I'll tell you about it. It's a service that puts this algicide right down on top of the stuff on the lake bed. And it costs a lot of money. And Lake Norman went to the counties that surround Lake Norman and ginned up about $60,000 to fight what they had up there. Whoop, don't touch there. Just decided to kick in. Don't touch them. That can cause sickness, and thank you, sir. Can cause sickness. Children don't water ski over it. Don't use it for cleaning, so on and so forth. All right, let's try this one. So North Carolina State University has been the one that's researching this stuff. The treatments have to occur between April and September. There's 6 of them, each one a month. The cost to treat Lake Gaston in 2021 was $718,000, and they think it's going to cost them about 1.3. I'll find out what that is when they get the results from the September treatment. Again, Lake Norman, $60,000. Our cost was $31,000. So even though this has been added to the North Carolina list of funding for which, you got these invasive species, that money has got to be spread across lots of different lakes. We may get some. I'm not counting on it, nor is anybody else in North Carolina. Lake Wateree is also infected with this stuff, and they've got a group down there that's, let's see, the Lake Wateree Association is in the process of developing similar funding model to be what's done here in North Carolina, is get the counties together. I've been working with Ron Hargrove, who's the Secretary Treasurer of the Charlotte Wateree Water Management Group. He's also an official with Charlotte Water. He and Brett Hardis, who's the scientist for Duke Energy, we've decided this is a bigger elephant than we can handle with our budgets here in the Marine Commission. We're going to have to get some additional help, money, okay, to combat this stuff. It's different from anything else we've seen as far as hydrilla. or alligator weed is concerned. We are putting together a conference, it may be I don't know what we're going to call it yet, symposium, conference, group, whatever. We're going to get together here in December, and we're going to invite some of y'all, some of the county people, state legislators, to come together and see if we can figure out what's the best way forward this thing. I say $110,000 for Lake Water, and they didn't even have a Marine Commission up there. So we got a new problem on our hands, and we're going to do the best we can to fight it by gathering the people who have an interest or should have an interest to get together and see if we can fight this thing. And that's all it is from Lake Wiley.
Thank you, Neil. We appreciate you being here tonight. Any questions?
Yeah, I've just got one quick question for you. So that newest bacteria or that you found, if fish eat that, then it would contaminate the fish?
I will find out the answer to that and get back to you. I'm
Okay.
told it's toxic, and I'm
Okay.
told it can, what do I slide, it can affect the pets.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't swim in it, you shouldn't jet ski over it. It can cause pets to have a problem, get sick, and it can cause sickness in humans.
Yeah.
Now, I'll find out about the fish. I
Yeah.
owe you an answer on that.
And the other question I have is that this thing, I think based on our conversation, it can continue to go downstream, so it can contaminate the Catawba River.
Well, this stuff is already there on the lake bed, and if it gets enough nutrients, that's when it comes up. Apparently, this stuff has been there for a while. One of the things we hope to do with this conference is to have these North Carolina State University experts, subject matter experts, come and explain to everybody exactly how this stuff occurs, why it comes to the surface, what causes it to come to the surface. What would happen if we did nothing? I mean, these are kind of questions, that need to be answered. Why can't we just scoop the stuff up? These are the kind of questions that we have to explore and have decent answers for you, so that when we come and say, we need some more money to fight this stuff, it's a fight that's worth fighting. So some of the stuff, I just don't know the answer, sir, but I'll get back to you on the fish business.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Neil.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We now have Rick Lee with Citizens for Better and Safer Roads to address council regarding their support for the Pennies for Progress program. We can tell that.
Good evening, Chairwoman Cox, members of council. My name is Meg Jenkins Locke, and I'm the chair for the Citizens for Safer and Better Roads. And I am honored to be here tonight. I am a native of South Carolina, but I spent most of my life in York County. My father moved here. He was Coach Bob Jenkins in 1965 to York. Started the football program, or tried to master the football program in York. But he and my mother lived here for 3 years. That door kind of shut in York, and Coach Tommy Oates brought him over to Rock Hill High in Rock Hill. And he ended up retiring in Rock Hill after being in a storied career, a legendary career at Rock Hill High, Northwestern, and South Point. My sister was a graduate of Winthrop University. My sister and my father both have their master's degrees in counseling and both retired from Rock Hill School District number 3. My mother was an advocate, a citizen activist in the city and the county, and helped found York County Mental Health, York County Alcohol and Drug Abuse, and was one of the catalysts behind hospice and community care, which exists as the nonprofit hospice today. And I tell you all this to tell you how proud I am of who we are and what we've done in York County. I've had a business in York County since 2008. I brought Groucho's Deli from Columbia to Rock Hill, sold it in 2018, and have another business, Legacy Health and Wellness, in Fort Mill, and love York County and am back as a resident again. And as the chair of this committee, we are very excited and very proud of y'all for putting on the ballot the referendum that we'll have this November, on November 5th. We have the opportunity to vote yes for better and for safer and better roads in York County. The Pennies for Progress 5 program is on the ballot and will continue the successful tradition of improving our roadways. A vote yes ensures safer and better roadways for everyone means non-residents help pay for road improvements, guarantees faster emergency time for our medical, police, and fire departments, and does not raise taxes. These well-maintained roads are crucial for our economy and our quality of life. And I'm going to let your esteemed council member, former council member Rick Lee, tell you more about this. But I also want you to know that we're a volunteer group that are doing this, that we have taken our time and our talent and our funds and are working to raise money and do this, and we're so proud to be a part of this. But we hope you all will listen to Rick and also vote yes on November 5th.
My story is a lot duller than hers. I'm just a former councilman who lived here since about 1970. I have 4 children and a wife who is a school teacher and 5 grandkids, and enjoy living here and don't plan to go anyplace. I'm coming out of the house I'm in with my toes up on a big pair of boots. So thank you for letting us talk to you tonight. Which one of these two works? Let's see. Left hand. So what I wanted to do tonight was, first of all, to thank you for continuing the 28-year tradition of County Council supporting Pennies for Progress and all the improvements that we've made across this county. Sometimes I'm sure you get folks who say, I don't want taxes, et cetera, but this 1 cent sales tax has had a profound effect on our community with our money and with the things we've done for ourselves. I also wanted to provide you with a little bit of a refresher on what all's in the program and show you what we're using with our advocacy. Counselor, nice to see you this evening. Show you what we're using for our advocacy, and the guests who are here tonight, give them some of the details, as well as people who might be watching us online this evening. I do want to point out, and it's an important thing to share with people when the subject comes up, that on the ballot it won't say Pennies for Progress. And people who look at the ballot are probably going to be looking for that, because that's the only way we've referred to it in conversations for so long. It's Capital Projects Sales Tax Referendum, which is a big mouthful. But if people ask you about it, just tell them to check yes. Just vote yes. That's all you have to do. It makes it straightforward and easy. So the Pennies for Progress program is a showcase program in all of South Carolina. It's been imitated in a number of other locations. No one has had the success that we've had with this program. The Pennies for Progress projects are evaluated with 4 criteria, which you see up there: safety, connectivity, prosperity, and quality of life. Safety, for example, for every foot of asphalt that's added on the shoulder of a road, it reduces accidents by 15%. Who knew it? But that's the way the numbers work out when you use it. Connectivity for our sheriffs and emergency response personnel, as well as the citizens, to be able to move briskly and safely from point A to point B. Prosperity, we manufacture a lot of goods in this county, and we have a lot of agricultural goods in this county. And these roads add to the ability to move them from where they are produced to where they'll be purchased and used. And the quality of life, I can't think of anything worse than sitting in the summertime in a traffic light for 4 or 5 changes trying to get through one intersection. So to me, that's a quality of life issue. So a vote for pennies does not increase your citizens' taxes. The program has been here for 28 years. The same penny that we started with in 1997 is still being used today in 2024. We ensure, as we note, better and safer roads. Roads are, the funds that we collect are only used for one purpose, and that is for road improvements, and that can be paving, it can be shoulders, or a host of other infrastructure-related activities. You cannot use it legally for any other use, and oftentimes you'll get a question from people, what happens if you need some money? Can you take it out of the pennies program? The money stays in our York County because it's all collected here. It doesn't go to Columbia. There's nobody that siphons off 10% at some other location for administrative costs. The non-residents contribute about 40% of the total budget in sales tax revenue for this project. This creates a much faster response time for police and fire departments. It is the principal source for improvements on our roads. The South Carolina Department of Transportation really does not have the funds to do significant improvements on a rapidly growing county such as ours. I'm going to show you a slide here. I hope this is live. Is this slide live? Those 4 circles are the 4 projects in 1997 that the DOE committed that they were going to undertake in York County for the next 20 years. It was about $26 million. Now, if this slide was live, it would... No? So, if you happen to figure out how to make it live while you're over there, it would be appreciated. The exciting thing you would have seen had it been live is all of the roads that have been done since 1997. And it is really quite impressive what we've been able to do. So nearly $1 billion of roads have been built as a result of Pennies for Progress. Imagine the lowly penny being collected year after year till you had $1 billion worth of improvements in the roads. Now that includes, of course, funds that we've requested, matching funds from the Department of Transportation, the feds, for expansion of I-77 and other areas. But it is really an extraordinary program. So here's the breakdown. $410 million will be collected over a 7-year period, $225 million for the carryover projects, 7 of them. We have, as I believe, an obligation, a moral obligation to the voters to make sure that we honor the commitments that were made and get the ones that ran into money trouble finished, as well as whatever we can do additionally in the coming year. Anticipated total income of $410 million. We're going to use $225 to catch up on the projects. They were hit, as you know, by all of the inflation that came after COVID, and wasn't much we could do about it. If you look at the price of eggs right now, you know, they've gone from $1.45 in 2020 to $3 and something in 2024. So it's the same effect on all of this construction. The $80 million will be set aside for road surface repaving. I have an old car, and I was driving the other day down a rough road in Rock Hill, and I won't name where it was, but it broke the suspension on my car. So I'm really looking forward to some new asphalt going down, so I don't have that experience going forward. So you can see the other projects there. They are very worthwhile, and I hope that the public supports them. These are, this is a slide showing you all the different projects which are planned in the county, and they're evenly distributed throughout the county. There's benefits to every group in York County for these particular projects. There is a countywide intersection improvement program, and I know a few of these intersections myself, and so the improvements are either for traffic flow or safety reasons, and there's a total of 14 of them. They'll be done over the course of time. I'm not sure exactly where they fall in the pecking order of timing, but all of you, I'm sure, notice and know many of these intersections. There'll be the 5 lane widening projects, or US 21. When I first came to Rock Hill back in, I don't know, 1970 or something, I still had a full head of hair, and US 21 was only 2 lanes. And so since then, about 180,000 people have moved here, and it's still 2 lanes. So we're looking forward to seeing that accomplished. And there's others there as well, as White Street, the Fort Mill Parkway, and the Neely Road corridor improvements. The next slide shows you the Rock Hill area roads that are scheduled for resurfacing as part of that $80 million portion of the project. And I don't want to go, I'm not going to go through all the roads, but you can see, and you have a copy of the slide there on your screen. It's pretty significant. The same is true in Fort Mill, TK. They have these roads which are scheduled for improvement and repaving. Dam Road is a good candidate for that, and as are a number of the others. So Clover Lake Wiley area roads, these are the ones in that area. Allison Creek Road I know quite well, and I'd be glad to see that one repaved as well as a number of the others. York and Western York County, here's the list of roads that are to be repaved as part of the repaving program. And I share these with your constituents so that they're aware that all these improvements are headed their way if they vote yes. The next slide is sort of a recap of the process that everybody went through. With the appointment of 6 people to a commission, and the commission held public hearings across the county, and they took recommendations from the citizens and from the municipalities and so forth as to which roads were critical to support either growth or to improve quality of life and so forth, connectivity or safety. So after they pulled all these hearings and the data from the hearings together, they put together their list and voted for it, endorsed it, and sent it to y'all, and y'all had the choice of thumbs up or thumbs down. And we're certainly glad, as we will all be, that you voted thumbs up for it, and it's going to move ahead.
York County was the first in the state to pass a 1-cent sales tax on everything.
This is a 3-minute tutorial. Do you want to hear the 3-minute tutorial, or can we move
I think we
past
know
that?
the tutorial,
I
but we
think we
appreciate
better.
the work you're doing to
Yeah.
let everybody else know about it.
Well, do you want me to play it or not?
Nobody wants to say no, but no.
I think we're fine.
I'll be glad to say no.
That's right.
We can run it 2 or 3 times even if you'd like. Anyway, it's on our website, so those who have yearning, if you're in cyber world, wherever you are, go to our website and you can view it at night after you get ready for bed.
York County was the first.
So the whole idea here is to vote yes for pennies. I would point out that there is no other source for funds available. If we succeed in getting this passed, then these insignificant pennies that we have will contribute another $400+ million to the improvements in our roads. I hope that we can do it again after this, when this one is voted positively. We'll make the roads safer and better for everyone. Non-residents who don't live here will contribute mightily to the cost of the road improvements, which we're always happy to hear. We'll have faster response times for emergency services. Our citizens will be more able to get from point A to point B in a timely fashion without the problems of congestion, of delaying it. And most important to many people is it does not raise taxes. So this is the type of presentation that we're making at a whole lot of locations as volunteers to try to support this effort and make sure we pass another much-needed Pennies for Progress. So any questions or comments?
I want to say thank you to Rick and Meg for your volunteer work and making sure that folks in the community know what the project is. We certainly know it, sitting up here on this council. One of my favorite things about pennies that folks don't necessarily know is that through the council's work to have a reserve fund on the last pennies program, I think it was 80 miles. I get the 80 and the 50 mixed up. It's either 80 miles for $50 million of resurfacing projects, the first time we've ever done that. And that was done by leveraging. We were able to start immediately. We were able to get it done in 4 years. I want to thank our staff and folks here who helped us negotiate that. But all that was done under budget and within 4 years. And when COVID hit, it created some issues with some of these road projects that are coming forward. But I appreciate the work that you're doing. Are there any questions from council, Mr. Roddy?
Yes, thanks for all your hard work, Rick.
Yes, sir.
And everybody that was involved with it. You mentioned how we've gotten some matching funds throughout the years with a lot of these pennies. I think that would be an interesting number to know what those matching funds come up to, because it's an added value to what the penny gives to us.
All right, you have a calculator? I can tell you what each of the totals were for each of the pennies programs. Does anybody have a calculator? All right. Put on the binoculars. Add up 99 million, 173, 186, 278.
And see, these are matching funds that each pennies have brought in.
These were the pennies programs, and I'm going to subtract that from $1 billion.
He's got the number, he's got
Yeah.
I think what Bump's referring to are like the SIB, projects that we were able to secure some funding from the SIB projects and additional.
485, so more than $500 million came from matching funds that were available only because we passed the Pennies for Progress program and could put money on the table.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's
So-
a little known fact about
That's-
pennies.
Yeah, you're
that
right.
hasn't been put out there.
That's the first time I ever calculated it right there.
If you don't do it, that wouldn't have happened. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that vote, yes, really did enable this community. I think the fact that York County was the first to do it in the state
I love that.
is
Yeah.
just fantastic and something to hang your hats on, and the citizens certainly voted for it, and then we have non-residents paying for it. And in an era when you can't agree on many things, we had a 70% approval rating over the last election, and we hope to do that or higher this time. So to agree is a lovely thing to be able to do in York County. I'm proud of them
Amen.
for that, so we appreciate the opportunity.
I know, Servant, were you actually on the pennies commission this time?
No, I
Okay.
wasn't. I had a problem with dual office chairing. I was on the DHEC board at the
Okay.
time.
Okay. Because I know we're going to have some conversation coming up here later this evening about bike lanes.
Oh.
And I was going to ask someone who's on that commission
did they consider doing bike lanes on some of the Pennies projects that we're gonna put in? I think that's kind of gonna be my position on bike lanes in York County. That's something that Pennies handle versus this council trying to dictate and pick and choose where we put bike lanes. I think that's something for a Pennies commission versus something that this council should dive over into, because they're the ones looking at the roads, looking at the safety, and they spend a lot, that's their job, to spend time looking at the safety of our roads and what it's gonna cost. So I was gonna ask that question.
I don't know if Kevin knows or not, but during Pennies 4, I believe the policy was to include bike lanes wherever possible, but I can't swear to that. I don't think that there's the money this time in here, given that we had to go back to collect the projects that hadn't been finished. It really took a lot of flexibility out of the program.
And that may be something that could happen in
Yeah.
Penny 6. We just have to pass Penny 5 first.
I'll be in a rest home by then.
No, you won't. We'll be back here talking.
Anything else? Hearing nothing?
Well, just, again, I'd like to thank you all, and the work that the committee's done has been phenomenal. You know, as you talked about earlier, the money's being raised by our tourists, our people driving through the area. It's huge.
40%.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And so the value of this and not having to raise a dime of taxes it's a double benefit, so.
And that's almost a lower number as well. We estimated that number. If the growth
Yeah.
continues, that number will be even higher over the next 7 years.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I will send you the slide, the live slide, so that you have the picture of all of the roads that have been completed, and you can share that with your constituents.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I was going to
Appreciate
say,
it.
the
Thank you.
website is penniesforprogressyc.com, and it's on the chamber site, but if you wanted to have that, it's a great place to go and get all this information to share with your constituents, but also with the audience. Thank
you
y'all
both.
again.
Meg, it was great seeing you here tonight. Appreciate what you're doing here in the community and what your family's done here. Rick, as a fellow council member, we recognized you recently for receiving the Order of the Palmetto, so congratulations tonight for receiving that fine honor for a citizen here in South Carolina.
Thank you, sir. It was a real honor.
Thank y'all.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. We move now to our public forum session. This is an opportunity where we get to hear from individuals from the community that come and sign up ahead of our meeting. And it looks like we only have a couple of folks and they already know the rules. So we got 2 minutes if you'll give your name and address before you get started. Scott already knows he's first up. Scott Coconut.
Hey everybody, Scott Coconauer, 122 West Oak Street in the beautiful Whitewell Park neighborhood in downtown Fort Mill. Football started out great. Catawba Ridge 3-1, heading to Bob Jones Stadium Friday night. So we're going to go whoop up on the Jackets Friday night. So, hey, I did take the time to watch y'all's meeting last time, and I was here talking about some small business items. I appreciate all your comments you made. The easiest thing that y'all could do is on our commercial car property tax, take us from 10% to 6%. It would save us enough money. And then on our property taxes on our fixtures, equipment, and everything like that, if you could just zero that out, quit sending that bill to us. That's a quick and easy fix, or knock it in half or something like that. So you want some quick, easy fixes, there they are. Most small businesses don't do the COG. Most of us don't do the chamber. We want less government, less rules. We want to perform, not have to deal with government issues and things on that line. So appreciate y'all taking the time to discuss that. I happen to be here to talk about sidewalks, bike paths on Highway 21 in Pennies, and also getting us down to River Bend Preserve. This is our opportunity as a county to perform, to have those accesses for our citizens, for our communities, to get us the correct way to do that. There is a federal mandate, a federal guidelines to go by, highways.dot.gov, highways.dot.gov, and then also safety.fhwa.dot.gov. So these are guidelines that are stated that if you have your road and then your grass areas and then your sidewalks and your bike lanes, you're not buying any more right-of-way, because the right-of-way for that is where we're dumping utilities. Now you're putting utilities in these green spaces. So you don't have to buy any more right-of-way to do this. So there's opportunities for us to perform and make a difference in the future of our great lives here in York County.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate y'all.
Tony Smith.
Go Tom Ridge.
Good evening, Tony Smith, 4249 Sharon Road, Sharon, South Carolina. Thanks to the Pennies guys for their presentation. The joke on the western side of the county is we always say that we'll keep the potholes, y'all can keep the people on that side. But with the stuff y'all are talking about now, us on the western side, we don't like being handcuffed to our property rights. And so this AGC stuff that got changed to 10 acres for 2 dwellings, not sure when it got changed. I asked Jonathan earlier, and he told me it was changed in the original recode. I actually did it in June of 22, so he said that I slipped through there. I find that hard to believe because I had to ask for a variance for this particular case. And I feel certain that they were gonna let anybody slip through there with anything. It wasn't gonna be me, especially when I had to ask for a variance. So I'm not sure, I don't remember seeing it. I watched that recode pretty good. I was on the zoning board then. Anyways, I don't know where it came from, but it's really going to handcuff a lot of people and their rights on the western side of the county. We are probably the largest, I know we're the largest landmass, and so we're the largest owner of 5-acre AGC tracts too. And a lot of those AGC tracts are multiple families living on one tract. The average house price in York County right now is like $382,000. Well, not all kids can afford that. So I know many, many, many people on our side of the county that say, all right, well, we'll just pull a mobile home in the, grandma and grandpa's backyard or mom and dad's backyard, and we'll live there until we get our funds up under us and we can go buy a property. But 5 acres has always been plenty. I mean, that's 227,000 square feet, 217,000 square feet. Why is that not big enough to have 2 dwellings on? Why did we make it 10 acres? And I've heard the cause that, we solve the problem by if we ever need to subdivide it. Well, I was on the zoning board for 7 years, and I can recall one case where we had to subdivide, we had to give a variance to subdivide for 2 homes on an AGC tract. So I would just ask that you guys look at that. I think
Thank you, sir.
I think you're affecting a lot of people with that 10 acre.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That concludes our public forum for tonight, and those were the individuals who signed up. We move now to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion on consent?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to our first item. We do not have any public hearings tonight. Our first old business item is found on page 9 of the council packet. Council to amend and provide second reading of an ordinance to authorize the sale of property identified by tax map number 594-02-04-002 and situated on 166 and 210 Dotson Street, Rock Hill, South Carolina, to entertain an existing offer to purchase the parcel, to authorize the execution of the contract of sale and deed, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters relating thereto.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Move now to item number 2 in old business, rezoning action. Consider third reading case number 24-32, tax map numbers 58100, 00054 through 62, 64, 65, 70, 58300, 00071 to 072, and a portion of 58100, 00071 to rezone from RMX 10 to RUD, 15 parcels totaling 215.29 acres in District 2.
Motion to approve with what we have mentioned before, following the following condition, which was a deed restricted 5-acre minimum lot size. In addition to that, the property must be subdivided so that no more than one zoning district is applied to a parcel. An approved subdivision plat encompassing the portion of the property zoned RUD shall be recorded with York County Register of Deeds within 90 days of the rezoning approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Move now to item number 3, rezoning action. Consider third reading, case number 24-34, tax map number 720-00-00-007, 008-260, to rezone from RSF 40 to OI, 3 parcels that total 6.5 acres in District 1.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. We move now to our first item of new business, council to authorize the expenditure of $124,472 in York County Forever Commission funds to Nation 4 Land Trust for expenses related to a conservation easement on approximately 264 acres of property near the intersection of West McConnell's Highway and North Burris Road, tax map numbers 216-00-00001 through and 12-218-0000020.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself as a member of the Nation 4 Land Trust Board.
Okay? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question. I have a question.
Ms. Roddy?
I was looking in the notes, and it said there's an additional $75,000 being allotted. What is that $75,000 for?
Yes, so this additional $75,000 is for a contribution for the purchase of development rights. So the State Conservation Bank said they would provide $325,000. The property owner has requested $400,000. So when the State Conservation Bank said they wouldn't give the full $400,000, the Land Trust came back to York County Forever in a follow-up meeting and asked for an additional $75,000 in funds.
And this is to be used on this property or?
This will be used for the Sadler Farm. That's correct.
And these funds go, kind of explain to the public what these monies are going towards, because some people think people are putting money in their pocket for transactions. Is this, my understanding is for closings and?
That's part of it. So, yeah, I can break it down. So there's two things going on here. There's about $49,000 that is what you typically see York County Forever contributing for. So that would be closing, that would be attorney fees, survey. There's about 12 things that are listed in the agenda item that $49,000 goes to. One of those things is for the land trust to oversee the property and the easement into the foreseeable future every year. And there's a lot
So
that
like
goes
a
with
maintenance,
that.
like a maintenance.
Just to make sure that they're abiding by the conservation easement. So then a property owner has a couple options if they want to seek a conservation easement. Obviously, a lot of people do that for tax purposes. So you might conceivably use the differential between the property appraisal when the property is appraised at the current value. So this site could be RUD right now. So if you got 264 acres that could be RUD, you can picture what potentially could happen there. And so you do an appraisal of the current value, and then you have an appraisal done of what it would be worth if it was in a conservation easement. So that attachment is also on the agenda item. It shows the differential in those two appraisals. I think it was 1.8 million to a little less than $1 million. So some property owners, they want to claim that deduction. Some property owners want some monetary benefit and to claim the rest as a deduction. So that's what we're seeing here, a combination of the two.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, just for the interest of the people viewing, can you just give a brief description, though, of what the value of this program is to people that want to preserve their property?
Well, I think, and I'll talk about where this property is too. It's at the intersection of McConnell's Highway and
Yeah,
North
and not
Burris Road.
specific to this program, but just, I mean, to this property, but
Sure.
the program in general.
So the reason why this property is important, though, speaking to the entire program, is there's other properties that have been conserved in this area. And this is a really important area to conserve. There's a historical nature to this property. There was a church there in the 1770s. There's an old cemetery there. There's a creek that runs through there. So the goal of this program is to preserve agricultural and other property from being developed. So it's important to keep the nature of York County protected, and this is one way to do that, is helping citizens create conservation easements of their properties. This is a large property, 264 acres. There's other properties in the area that potentially could also be looking at conservation easements. So when you begin to put tracts of land together that citizens are saying, hey, well, we want to keep this a farm. We're not interested in developing this to the full property right that we have in terms of RUD, then all of a sudden you're preserving a lot of land. You're keeping York County similar to what people have had that experience at York County in the past. So we're trying to protect and preserve.
Right, and I appreciate you doing that. Again, I want to make sure everybody in the public understands the program. And again, it comes with tax savings too to the property owners, which is really, again, an important value to people who do want to preserve their property. So again, thank you for sharing that for the public. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move now to item number 2 in new business. Council to approve the purchase of virtual desktop infrastructure for use by York County's Office of Emergency Management from Data Network Solutions, Inc. of Chapin, South Carolina, for a total cost of $169,149.14, as defined in Section 35.009 GW of the York County Procurement Code, as part of the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Program.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those-
I do have one question. On this, for this equipment though, is there one buyer that they normally will go through for this purchase, or do they look at other opportunities or vendors?
We had to, in this particular instance, we were tying into an existing system, so we had to make sure we matched that up.
Okay,
So that's why it was so sourced.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move now to the final 4 items of our agenda, and just by way of kind of brief background, Planning and Zoning Committee met prior to the last council meeting and provided an update to the council about their recommendation on a number of items. There were 4 of them, including self-storage, the AGC issue, and density issues, right-of-way, and then some discussion about home occupation. And this was the first meeting that the committee had this year. It was a pretty large issue. I appreciate the council members who were called back. I think I was able to speak with just about everybody except for Mr. Roddy to try and figure out how do we proceed. When something like this comes out of committee, I think the options and really kind of what our council here will address with each one of these, and we'll take them up individually. I did speak with the chair of that committee at length about how do we approach addressing these and how much discussion is required, and are there some things. I think the comments were that this was a lot to handle in one committee meeting. It was long, a lot of issues to be brought forward. So in talking through those issues, I think there was some question about was the issue that was asked specifically addressed. But the bottom line is where we are with council is when this comes back from committee, and to bring this back from committee, we essentially have 3 options. One, we proceed with the recommendations out of committee as is and instruct staff to move forward with an ordinance revision to Planning Commission. 2, you can ask staff to conduct some additional research and investigation, report back to council with any changes or options. Or 3, just table it all or reject it all. And so I think as we take each of these up, I think that's kind of what council's role is on this, is to give some discussion and direction on that. The first one, which is item number 3, council to discuss a potential zoning code text amendment related to self-storage facility uses. And in that particular case, the recommendation out of the committee was to eliminate storage buildings as a use in all districts except for those in the industrial area. And so I think the question for council and what we need to hear from the council is, do we want to proceed with that recommendation as is? Do we want to conduct some additional research, ask for some additional information, and ask for options, or do we want to reject it altogether? And so I think that's the purpose of what we've got going on. And
I'd like to start off. I know myself, Allison, and Debbie heard from staff, asked them what were other areas doing. Staff made a recommendation on, based off of what other counties, other areas were doing with their self-storage. And we looked at it, we didn't, even though we removed it from several zoning codes, they're still allowed, but by special exceptions, if I'm understanding what we did and talked about that particular day. We didn't just, the committee didn't just go in there and slash it. Staff made a presentation, told us how things were going, and gave us their pretty much recommendation of what they thought we could do. I would like for that, I would like for the full council to hear and see the different zonings that other counties don't allow it, and how we come to the conclusion that, hey, we think this is a good fit to do and try here. So I know, some people want to see more storages or less storages, but we didn't just arrive at this particular juncture on our own. There was some guidance by staff, there was some conversation but with staff. So that was my take on how the meeting went, how we got to where we are. So if anybody has any question, I think a good point to start would be have staff come in, put on the board what they showed the committee, and maybe that would relieve some of the questions that has been brought forth since we had this particular committee meeting.
Like other council members, we probably took time to watch the meeting so we could be as informed as possible tonight so we could talk through this. One question I had about the principal dwelling in AGC, which you're referring to, the county was listed at the top and the municipalities are listed at the bottom. My question is, when were those adopted? Were those adopted in the 80s and the 90s, the 2000s, or in the last 5 years?
No, we're talking about the storage. We're going to break down the other ones.
Right, so
Yeah.
as you look at that graph that you all looked at in your meeting,
Okay.
the top part has the counties and the bottom part has municipalities. And it says how they handle storage facilities today.
Okay.
But what we don't know is, when were those ordinances
Right,
passed?
right.
Was it passed 25
Right,
years ago when growth
right.
was not an issue? Or was it passed most recently when growth is an issue?
That I don't know.
And I-
Can't speak to that.
Right. So it'd be hard to use, for me to use that as a guide to influence me to think that one is better than another, because I would need to know the answer to that question first and able to do that.
Well, which I agree with, Bump. I mean, they did present, but if I'm remembering right, it went to the committee just to discuss the setback. And then before long, we was talking about taking it out of, just leaving it in two zones.
Yeah, that's what I'm a little bit confused about, because, bringing, what got brought forward to me, looking at this thing, didn't appear to be what was brought forward to the planning group to kind of come up with, which was the setbacks.
Setback.
The setback piece. So I'm not sure how we got from setback to changing the zoning code to restrict.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a complete swing of the pendulum, and I would really like to go back and have them look at this again to come out with some other options on setback and what original ask was.
What did our agenda say? What was actually on the agenda?
What, for today?
No, that was for that meeting, that particular meeting. Deb, do you have that agenda?
I got the agenda. It's a discussion regarding self-storage facility location.
Said nothing about setbacks. So how can we sit here and say it
Location,
was?
this is what it is, the agenda, right there, you want to look at it?
Well, what happened was, when we were
Well,
discussing
that's-
660, I originally brought this up, and I suggested that we take self-storage out of 660, and we consider pushing self-storage 200, 300 feet off of a main road or corridor or frontage road, basically out of sight. And so, after we worked through 660, it was suggested that we refer this to committee, and that's what was referred. That's why at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Bruno said that this was a recommendation from Watts, Councilman Huckabee. And that's the recommendation that I made. So that's what Tom is speaking to.
Yeah.
And that is that we were asking you to come up with a suggestion tied around that.
Right.
And then now today, we're looking at something that is different than what the committee was asked to do. And by the way, I want to correct myself, you're right, it wasn't the principal dwelling, I had that in my head, but it's the self-storage that has the same thing with the county and the municipalities, I apologize. But does apply, what I said applies, I just said it wrong.
So what we talk about as a committee is our agenda. And then we had a handout. And this is what we were asked to do. We talked about what we were asked to do.
So my question would be, how did staff get on that vein of restricting and reducing and cutting
Yeah.
out if we were
Yeah.
supposed to
And
be
this is
talking
what
about
we-
setbacks?
I think that's a
Yeah,
great
I mean,
question.
Yeah, so how
that's
do we
what,
get-
right, that's what I'm
we
confused
wondered.
about, because, I mean, if it's on your agenda, it's on your agenda, but my point was that my interpretation of what was going back there was to talk about setbacks, so I don't know how we ended up coming up with
Is
that
that a
other
fair
piece.
question to
Well, how
ask,
did it
how
get
it
on the
ended up
agenda?
on the agenda that way?
We are happy to answer any questions y'all have. So
Yeah.
If you want us to talk
I
about
think-
how that happened, we can.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I think would be helpful, and I mean, for purposes of this, is not to rehash everybody needs to have access to it, and I think a lot of folks, I know I went back and after I got comments from all the council members, I went back and watched the video, got a copy of the information that was shared. I don't think that this venue is necessarily the appropriate place for us to take a look at. What I'm hearing from council is, let's ask staff to come back and say, what was referred to council? Are there other options to consider? If there are questions that council has, maybe give you guys a month. Let's bring this back within a month, give you 30 days, and let's have you take a look at whatever these remaining questions are from council. And I will say, I think that might be a better use of our time today instead of rehashing those, and it gets to the same questions.
Would it be appropriate to ask council members to get with staff, to get with Jonathan over the next month, maybe a deadline, so we're not calling him the day before, next Friday, the following Monday, and share with Jonathan what you would like to see in the self-storage ordinance? That gives everyone an opportunity to participate in this evolving into whatever it is we're going to see a month from now, assuming that's what we're going to do.
Well, if it's-
I think
coming to committee.
if there are questions, I think what we're saying is that we want, sounds to me like, and if I'm not mistaken, there's a majority of council here who says, look, we want staff to go back, take a look and see what was referred. Also, there was only one recommendation that was given to the committee to consider. Are there other recommendations to consider? And it sounds like one of them is to consider the setback. If there are other questions that council wants, I had a list of questions. I think it's more appropriate to ask those questions and then let staff report back in 30 days with, these are the answers to these questions. And if council has any independent questions, make sure you get them done before then. I think that's probably the cleanest way for us to take this back up.
Are we going to provide those questions now, or would you rather
I
allow
don't
each council
think we should
member?
use this, I don't think we should use this meeting to do. I think any questions that any individuals of council has,
I
make sure you
agree.
get them to staff
I agree on
within
that.
the next week
Yeah.
or two.
Well,
so
can't
that
we
they have
establish a
time.
deadline so that we don't put him on the spot? He's getting a call Sunday night with a suggestion, all due respect to staff, we
Right.
probably ought to set a deadline. so
September
that he
30th
can-
would be good.
Okay,
There we go.
Okay.
Get your questions in
Yeah.
by then.
all right.
All right, I don't think we need a motion, we just need to give some direction, is that right? To know how to handle this.
I agree.
All right. All right. So move now to the next one. Hang on, let me find the agenda. All right, council to discuss potential zoning code text amendment related to multiple dwellings allowed on a lot in AGC. Again, I think the question is, there was a recommendation that came out of the committee, that recommendation being that AGC be required to have 10 acres to have 2 primary dwellings, essentially saying one house to 5 acres, so keeping that AGC density to 1 to 5. So the question for us to decide is, one, do we proceed with an ordinance and refer it to planning commission on that? Do we ask for staff to do anything additional and to report back to the council? Or do we reject it or table it altogether?
I
And so we
personally
hear-
believe we need to refer it to staff, and I also think that this gives each council member an opportunity to decide, are you in favor of protecting property rights? Are you in favor of preserving rural land? Are you looking for some type of hybrid approach to dealing with this particular suggestion that came out of committee and for us to make a decision on? So you're looking for something that's middle ground?
I don't think, I would say, I'll go next. I don't think property rights are in question. Because anybody can come up and say, we're taking their property rights simply by a zoning code. Because if I have a piece of property and I want to put a gas station on it, and you say I can only put a house, I would then argue, say, well, you're taking my property rights. Where there are certain zonings and things that should apply that this council has been charged with since 1980 something. And we can't go back and say we're taking people's property rights just because we're putting zoning in and setting boundaries. Now, ever since RECODE, it's come up about 2 houses per 5 acres. I never heard that before. And I would like for staff to kind of clear up, how did that misconception go? Or what was it before RECODE? And how do we get to this big question of what's allowed in AGC, whether it's 5 acres, 10 acres, 20, 100? Is it based off the acreage? Is it based off the lot? Where were we before RECODE? Then I'll have another question after you answer this.
Sure, maybe it's
Great question.
most helpful if I just read out the definition and the old reading and the current. So prior to March of 2022, the way that uses were structured, all the uses were listed in every district. And so one of the uses that was allowed in AGC was dwellings, semicolon, no more than 2 dwellings per approved platted lot, period. So that was how it used to read. The current language is more expansive than that. It says more than 1 principal dwelling on a lot in AGC. That's the title of the paragraph. It says, in the AGC district, up to 2 principal dwellings are allowed on 1 lot if each dwelling is sited so that all applicable lot size, lot width, and setback requirements are met as if the dwellings were established on individual lots. This is intended to ensure both dwellings meet applicable zoning code requirements in the event the lot on which the dwellings are located is subsequently subdivided.
So what does it read now, since RECODE?
Yeah, that's what
when
I
it's
just
written.
read is the current version.
So what I'm hearing is basically, you're saying, for example, you have a 5-acre lot. You put 2 dwellings on it, correct?
Doesn't matter about the acreage originally. That's what
Okay.
we're asking.
But- Okay, but when you place that second dwelling there, it has to be positioned so that if you ever did any kind of split of that particular piece of property, that those 2 lots could stand on their own and still meet the code.
That's the current provision, yes.
Okay, so what is wrong with that? Because what I'm hearing, if you wouldn't be able to put that second house, if you got 5 acres, you couldn't put that second house right up next to the first one, because now if you ever had to split it, that would make that a non-conforming piece of property, correct?
He's referring to slide 3 in y'all's PowerPoint. If you could bring that up, that would be helpful, because that's what he's describing.
Because we talked about where homes, we talked about where they would have to be positioned on the lots in order to make it 2
But I
lots,
think
or if it's 10 acres.
Here, if, just to make sure, I mean, so for instance, this is not a rehashing of the
That's what
committee.
he's talking about.
This
right
is,
now. That.
these are the kinds of questions that I think, when you look back at what was, and what we're trying to decide, are we going to move forward with what came out of the committee, which was one recommendation, or is it this? And so I think your first question would be one of the questions that I think definitely needs to be asked and answered of staff before they come back, because Jonathan, I don't put words in your mouth. Prior to RECODE, you could put two primary dwellings on 5 acres.
On any,
That's-
there's no 5-acre limit.
Just, and I think maybe he needs to answer that question in a response to council with the rest of these things as you report back to us. So I think having that answer needs to be cleared up.
Okay, but Did you ask Jonathan, you want to answer that, Jonathan? And we can provide more comprehensive response as a follow-up.
Yeah, it was 2 dwellings per platted lot.
Which is 5 acres?
So it gets more nuanced because you do have non-conforming lots out there. There are lots in AGC today that are 1 acre. So in the old reading of the code, you could put 2 homes on a 1 acre lot in AGC, but typically, most lots in AGC are 5 or greater.
Madam Chair, I had asked for, and I don't know if you all can even show it. No, you're not going to pull it up? All right, but let me share this verbally right quick. So if you look at what y'all looked at in your committee, the plot just of that image you had, there are 133 plots on that image. So if you're a council member that doesn't want to take away the rights of a property owner, when RECODE went into effect, there were 39 property owners that had a lot that was 4.99 acres or less. We took their rights, or whoever was on council at the time took their rights away.
Those are in AGC?
Yes.
Okay.
And then moving it to 10 acres, there are 79 out of 133 that fall below 9.99 acres. So you are now going to take the property rights away from 79 of the 133 represented on this page. But if you go back to the original RECODE and you think about the impact, it's pretty significant.
Well, if it's AGC and there's 5 acres or less, that's really the smallest that you can about get with an AGC. Why would you allow 2 homes to go on that same small lot size and still call it AGC?
Because
now
they
you've
did.
gone to RUD.
That's what happened before RECODE, and it was
That
taken. And so I think that was, to me, that's what I heard folks say is, look,
Right.
there was one recommendation that came out of the committee, and that was to try to clear up some language in one provision under 155-270. But there wasn't a holistic approach about, all right, what happened to RECODE? Did you take rights? And let's figure out a way to, if that happened, how are we going to fix it, understanding there are a bunch of non-conforming uses. And so, once again, I have a ton of questions. I think what we need to do, since there was only one that wasn't vetted fully, is anybody who has questions about that to get them to staff and to report it back within 30 days. We'll revisit this, report back to council on these questions, because I could list for you. I spent a lot of time looking at the zoning code. I found a lot of questions that we don't need to air out here as a council, but if we ask staff and get a report back, then we can, with additional options, maybe at least we'll have a better discussion point.
If we agree with that, but we have the September 30th deadline to share our
Once again, ask the questions
input.
before then, and then
Yeah.
when
Well,
staff comes back.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we need to do that and bring it back. I guess, again, I thought when this was going back to this, because there was discussion because of the change during RECODE, there was an impact to people that own these properties. And you've got people that have owned this land for years, and they may want to build a home next to it where their daughter can live, right? Or whatever it may be, on 5 acres, or what, on 5 acres, or less. And that was there in the, but hear me, hang on. Let me.
That's right.
And so, but those rights, based on what we talked about, we took them away. I mean, those rights were taken away. And I think that you've got property owners out there that have lived there for years, and they probably were planning on having maybe their parents move in and building a home on the rest of what they had for the 5 acres, and now we've snatched that away.
Why do you think we can't do
But that's,
that?
hang on one second, I'm not done. Hold on. So I think that, again, my interpretation of what we were bringing back was to defend those rights of the people that own these properties.
That was not.
And yet, we're coming back now with something that was, again, not what I expected that we'd get out of it. So I would recommend we go back. September 30th would be my
I don't
recommendation.
understand why you think we're taking property rights, because, and to say anything under the guise of, if that's a word, it is tonight, of conservation, that's a joke. Let me tell you why it's a joke. Because if you've got 5 acres and people can build one house on that, and now you're saying they can build 2, that's not conservation of land. So throw that out the window, and let's talk about what we're really talking about. And very few people who have a 5-acre lot, it doesn't matter how many there were on that picture, very few people that have 5 acres are looking to build a second home on there.
But how
Very
can,
few. And how many have done it in the last 5 years? Very few have done it.
so you're making a
property
decision
rights-
for
We were
them?
quiet when you were talking.
That's right. Property
Don't
rights.
point at me.
Yes, I will point at you.
Hold
No,
up, we're
do not
done.
point
Here-
at me.
You interrupted
Here's
her.
the
We didn't
question,
interrupt
here's
you.
the answer to the question. Council, ask your questions. We're gonna get the information together. This is gonna be, you have until September 30th to ask the questions. Bring it back within 30 days. Is there anyone who objects to that?
I'm not gonna stop talking.
We're not gonna
Just
have
a
that,
minute.
yes, we are, because we're moving on. We're
Well, you
gonna
know what?
do
I'm
this.
tired of
The
being cut
majority
off
of the
because
council.
this
you let
council
Tom-
is
you
not
let Tom-
transparent.
This-
And
this
you're
is
letting
the
people
issue
talk,
here
and
is
you're
to-
not letting me talk. And I've got
Because
something very
the
important
issue,
to
the
say.
question we're asking is, what do you support? Moving forward with as it is, or asking staff to come back with additional information so that we can have this discussion where the questions are answered for the whole council to understand that? There's already 4 council members that have
That's right,
said,
because we're not transparent. Because those 4 council
we're
members
asking for
are
any
working
questions to
behind
be
the
answered.
scenes, and in this case, it
How
happens
is
to
this
be-
behind the scenes?
Oh, listen, it's behind the scenes, like everything else, and in this case, it happens to be against the 3 who happen to make up this committee, who've brought back everything that we had on our agenda.
Mr. Roddy asked a question about, prior to recode, were 2 houses allowed on 5 acres?
And the answer is no.
The answer is yes.
The answer is no.
Jonathan, what's?
We
are
need the
taking
answer
property
on
rights?
paper from staff. This is
Well,
why it
yeah,
makes
We get
it,
it right now, publicly.
He can tell us. So what?
He answered that question earlier in the
Yeah.
discussion.
So it's not on 5, you're saying you're twisting it. You're saying
not
on
about
5
the
acres.
acreage. It's not
Has
about the
nothing to
acreage.
do with
It's
the
not about
acreage.
the
It only
acreage.
has to do with the zoning.
that's not true.
But
Here-
if you move
this-
this, if you
Having
move
this
this
discussion
discussion.
here without having the questions answered is
can
what
answer it.
makes this discussion impossible.
He can answer it.
He can answer it right
He can
here.
answer it right now.
He already answered it.
Answer it again, please, sir. Are we taking, are 2 homes allowed on 5 acres prior and post recode? What is the situation?
So I'll read the definition again. So prior to March of 2022, it's stated no more than 2 dwellings per approved platted lot in AGC. So that's the old language.
Had
Says
nothing to do with the
nothing about
acreage.
5 acres.
Nothing
Prior
do with
to
the acreage.
recode.
Nothing to do with the acreage. He
Mr.
didn't even
Mr.
mention
Buono,
acreage.
prior to
Yeah, he did say that
recode,
earlier.
could you
Yes, he
have
did.
a 5-acre lot
That's what he said.
in AGC?
Yes.
You still can.
So prior to recode, you could have 2 primary homes on a 5-acre AGC lot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, though, I think the issue is the recommendation from the committee was to move it to 10 acres, which, and I'm going to email this to everybody after this meeting, and you look at it the way you want to look at it. That means that you have taken the property rights away from 79 just on this particular image. Apply it to all of York County unincorporated, and there's a whole lot more than that. 79 out of 133
So why don't we
parcels
just
on
make
here are
everything
affected.
RUD, Watts?
I don't think that's.
I'm not
Why do
suggesting.
we even have ag?
I'm not
Nobody is
suggesting
making
what
a
we do.
decision here. This is where your comments would come within 30 days. I think the question is, get all of the information and the questions that you have for staff on this proposal, because there was only one recommendation made. Get your questions to them, and then have those questions answered so that we all are on the same page with.
There was one recommendation made because the 3 of us agreed. That's why one recommendation came to council. And 4 of you
There
don't
was-
like it, and you know
Yeah,
what?
that's what
It's
it
a
is.
great political thing to start talking about property rights. But when you're talking about agricultural land and saving agricultural land, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Out of one side, you're talking about letting people build more. And on the other side, you're talking about saving land, and it's 2 entirely different conversations.
Well, the families that live on that ag land have children, and they need to be able to give their children's property.
That's
But the
not-
way it's set up right now,
No.
because it happened to me, you have to ask for a zoning change to RUD, because you taking like our situation, we got 7 children.
Well, you know what?
But the bottom
reason
line
why-
is,
It's not about you.
it's the people own the land, and they need to have this freedom. It's not a homeowner association. It's agricultural land, and they're big families generally. And the question about the 5 acres, I can take you to many farms, that the main parcel is over here, But they go, and over time, they bought 5 acres here, 5 acres here, and that's where they wanted to put their kids. And they don't want to give a bunch of land to a newly married youngins, because they don't know if they're going to stay married. And believe me, as a property owner, I don't want to lose land that way.
So you're looking at this like this, but I want to tell you something. We've had a couple people come before us, and what they wanted to do, they had ag land, and they wanted to divide that up and put another house on it to rent, rental houses.
No, we need to restrict
Nobody,
it to
hang on a
family.
minute. Nobody is making a decision here tonight.
Which is just a discussion.
Nobody's making a decision here tonight. The question is, are we going to move forward with the recommendation that came out of the committee, or are we asking staff to answer questions, report back to council so that we can make a decision about what the next step is?
Yeah,
I think
I'd recommend we move
There's some additional
forward.
information that needs to be.
Yeah, we move forward to bring
Just
questions back on the 30s. Can I make one quick comment?
Yes, most
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, this is the thing is that when it comes to conserving land, we're not talking about people that are putting developments in on their property. We're talking about a single home, additional home. And that means a lot to people that have families that own these properties.
Well, I think one of the fundamental questions that I think Mr. Roddy asked, and I do think council needs to get those questions to staff, and if the answers are what they are, then this is where we end up. But I think some of the questions were not answered. Some of them, I'll go ahead and share one of mine. Prior to that, I've been told that, let's see, right now, we allow developers under the cluster to do, if you look in here, it allows 2.5 houses on 5 acres. So a developer can come in here and do that, but we're not allowing family exemption folks who have owned that property to do that now. That is what's currently.
That's an unfair comparison.
How is
Because
that?
that developer's gonna have.
Ask that- just ask that
50, 60,
question.
80
They can, so a
acres.
developer can do it can do 2.5 houses on 5 acres, but a resident can't?
No.
Because there's,
Ask that question. We'll answer that.
We have a bunch of
30.
questions, so.
don't we have
Who's we?
provisions?
We're not gonna solve, what do you mean?
He said
who's
we have a bunch of questions. Who is we?
Now,
I
Jonathan,
think the other folks that have chimed in here, and so we're
Can I
not
do-
gonna be able to solve
can I
this.
direct another question to staff?
I think everybody has the right to ask any questions of staff by September 30th. Get all the questions
Well-
out there, report it back, and we'll all be on the same page with
Well,
the information.
Madam Chair, I think
Agreed.
you made an unfair comparison when you're saying that developers can put 2.5 homes on 5 acres, but there are mitigating factors that a developer can use to say, hey, I can build on 100 acres, I'm only gonna develop these 50 over here and put 2.5 homes on 5 acres, but I'm gonna leave this in preserved conservation or whatever, and we've allowed that.
And that is conservation.
That's conservation.
that's-
That's mitigation to be able to be allowed to put those homes on this set of 50 acres and leave this other 50 undeveloped. I think that's what you're referring to, but you're using that to say that now a homeowner can't put 2.5 homes on a 5 acre tract. There's not people knocking at the door trying to squeeze 3 homes on 5 acres, and if they were, we've turned them down.
I think, folks, what we have now is any questions. Well, I can continue to ask the questions that I have, like I said before.
Well, if you don't want to hear ours, we don't want to hear yours. So let's just all turn them in.
No, yeah, we are. That's what we're doing.
I thought you were getting ready to ask another one.
No, I said I'm going to refrain from doing that. Let's ask the questions of staff, get your questions to staff by the 30th, and we'll have 30 days from now, we'll bring this back to council.
So one other question is, I mean, Tommy's talking about restricting it to families for life. Do you
Can't do
restrict
that.
it to families?
I think those are his questions that he needs to ask, just like you can ask. None of this was brought up in the committee meeting, that's the point. These questions weren't
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of
asked.
stuff brought up in the committee.
I watched the committee meeting, these questions weren't asked. All right, so we're
Madam
referring
Chair.
He
that.
was there, he asked
Madam
that
Chair.
in the meeting.
I want to make this comment because I think it's important. Number one, all of us are passionate about what we believe in. I would assume that all of us take a lot of time to prepare for these meetings, whether you're talking to staff, you're talking to the public that's affected by this. We all spend a lot of time. Our chair spends even more time than we spend even preparing for these meetings. And it's my understanding, because I asked her, I said, you're asking me about storage and you're asking me about AGC. Have you called everybody on council to talk to them about this? And you said you did, and you just didn't get, you called Bump twice and you didn't get to speak to Bump. So it was said that it's 4 against 3. I don't believe that's the case. So she did try to reach out and speak to everybody on council about these 2 topics beforehand, so we would have some type of consensus on what we were going to do moving forward tonight. So I did want to correct that because it was said otherwise, which is not the truth. And I'm personally, as one council member, open to talking to every one of you about any topic. And it's a two-way phone line. You can call me or I'll call you, either one. But I'd be glad to talk to you about my position on something before we come in here to vote on it on any Monday night.
All right, so we're going to refer this like the other. The third item, and I'm going to need help with this one because I wasn't sure I fully understood what the recommendation was. Let me read it. Council to discuss potential zoning code text amendment related to measurement of lot area. I think there were, Jonathan, do you want to articulate what the recommendations were, or Debbie, out of committee? I wasn't sure I understood that one.
On the home occupation.
The right-of-way.
That's how we calculate the right-of-way.
The right-of-way
I
issue.
think this had to do with calculating the acreage of the pass based on the width of the road. You picked up 15 feet of the road, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So some people,
And trying,
my
right,
understanding from talking to citizens is, some people felt like they actually bought that and they could own 100 acres with a lot of frontage, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet of frontage road, and they paid for it, and now it's been taken away from them. So a value has been taken away from them. Is that
Right.
correct?
What this was actually about is someone who had come before us and they were looking, they had 20 acres, which you would think, okay, you can divide that into into 4 or 5 acre lots. But because the road right-of-way was included in that acreage, they only had maybe,
Right.
maybe they had 18.7 acres, I don't
Okay.
know. And they
Right.
couldn't divide it
We
into
had-
5, and that's
Yeah,
that's
well,
what-
that applies.
That's what it was.
well, I think one of the questions that needs to happen is, I think staff needs to go look and see what was actually referred to the committee, because I think there was another issue, for instance, a gentleman who, the gentleman who had 4.96 acres.
Yeah.
And they were told that he couldn't have, actually, no, because this doesn't solve that problem. So that's what I thought was going to this. So I think one of the questions for staff, if we're going to ask them to go back, is go look and see what were the issues that prompted this. Because you're thinking it's one issue, and that, I couldn't understand why the discussion went to accessory uses, because there was a gentleman who had 4.97 acres. He bought 15 acres, remember? He bought 15. He wanted to put a house on 5. He put a house on 2 of the 5s, and then the last one, because of the right-of-way,
4.84
he came
acres.
short. And so that was a question of why are we saying to someone they can't even put one house on this 5 acre lot in the midst of these others when he comes up short? And so what I understood from that, and this gets us back to making sure that we're clear on what's being referred to a committee, because you're thinking it's one thing, I'm thinking it's another.
I'm thinking those two are the same thing.
Well,
If
I
I
think-
could, y'all, when you're done, Madam Chair.
I think the question is, first of all, go ahead and tell me if you've got something good to say. Maybe you can
I
help
think
us.
this whole thing is an example of, we need to be more clear when we refer things to committee, the problem that we're trying to solve. And so I think that's an opportunity, as I hear y'all talk tonight, as I've talked with many of y'all in the last couple of weeks. One of this is, we can improve this process, we can make this clear, we can have on paper exactly what the charge is and what needs to be looked at, so we're not doing this next time, where we have different problems that have arisen from citizens, where we're all clear about what we're trying to solve. Jonathan and his team did present 3 ideas related to this topic. So there were 3 recommendations. The committee did approve all 3. So that was, and going back to the original question of what the recommendation was, Jonathan, do you want to summarize what those 3 things were?
Yeah, from the notes, the committee had correct me if you've got anything different, Debbie, but what I have from the notes, they had voted to not change the way that lot area is measured, to ask for an administrative adjustment process, and to take a further look and come back to them on how accessory structures are limited in both the Lake Wiley overlay and countywide.
So, I mean, my interpretation is, as you spoke about here, that was my interpretation of the fact that we had an example of somebody in the audience that came down to the 4.7. So I guess reading that, are we going to talk through the recommendations, or are we going to take?
Well, I think
we're going to bring this one questions back to?
To
Okay.
try and,
Let's-
to
that'd be
try and straighten
consistent.
this out, I think
Yeah.
what council needs to be able to say is, ask staff to go look and see what was referred and look at the examples, and then council be able to ask some questions of, does this resolve the problem that
Okay.
they understood it was sent to?
So I would make another recommendation. So when the minutes came out, I just gave a highlight of the motion, but on this particular one, it's very clear on the items that Planning Department recommended to us. And one of them is exactly that man that had the little tiny
Yep.
bit, it's called a "oh so close." And it was oh so close. And that is one of the recommendations, that the administrative folks would have that
Some leeway.
Debbie, I think
Leeway.
flexibility.
I think in asking the questions though, and this is why it's so important that we're clear and have, all of us have the same
But what I'm
information.
getting at is maybe this should have been provided to all of us, to all of you.
Well, I think just to that illustration, to your point about the oh so close, I did ask staff, I said, does that address this concern? No, it does not. They take it, so I think that's why we have to drill it. It doesn't address this. The staff's recommendation was not to fix that because it was a lot size issue, and they're saying not to do that. And I think here and again, and I think so I think that's why we need to ask these questions. So I think some folks thought the oh so close would have captured that, but it doesn't because it was a lot. That's where we've just got to at least be able to ask the questions.
Well, how do we fix a lot size that's not to the minimum? We're looking for solutions that will help curtail some of the shortfalls in the oh so close, like the gentleman in your district who started out with 15, built the house on 5, he wanted to split the other 10, he found out he was 4.86. Oh, that's oh so close. Staff, we've always talked about giving them some discretion or some leniency to make things work. We're not going to fix a lot size that comes up 4.85 to make it all of a sudden now make it a 5-acre tract. But what we're trying to fix is ways to accommodate and be reasonable about what we approve and not approve. So we're not going to fix a 3-acre lot to make it a 5-acre to say yes. That's way too far off. If it's a 4.85, 4.86, 4.9, like we've seen several people come, I don't want to turn those down. I want to make sure staff has that leniency or variance that they can say, yeah, that's close enough. Make that recommendation to us to say, yeah, we approve it. Staff stands behind it. The planning commission knows to approve it. Because there are going to be several instances where there have been, we've seen it. Somebody's bought 15 acres, they split it, and all of a sudden now they got a 5-acre tract and a 9.85. You can only get one 5-acre tract out of a 9.85, and you're gonna be stuck with a 4.85. That person should be allowed to split that up and put 2 more houses there. Right now, if we just draw the line saying it's a minimum, has to be hardcore 5, that person can only put 1 house on that 9-point-something acres because we're saying you got to have 5 solid acres, and we know we've taken part of that was in the road.
Yes.
You know, so
But
that's what we're trying to solve.
I think that's where it's important to make sure that in the committee, I'm not sure it was fully vetted to get to the question. What you're saying is, I think what we wanted to end up with, that's not what we have recommended to us. So I
Right.
think council, just ask your questions and say, does this resolve this concern? So that when it comes back to us, we know for sure what because I do think folks thought that would have fixed that problem. It doesn't fix that problem. That's just one of them.
Right, and I think, you know, when we had, again, talked about it, the fact was, he bought 15 acres. He assumed he had 15 acres.
The plat shows 15 acres.
Right, the lot shows 15 acres. And the fact was that because of the right-of-way, so that was kind of the exception to the reasoning. right, behind it. So I think because of that exception to the reasoning, I think that's why we need to bring back and come up with a reasonable solution.
We gotta give
on
an
this.
exception to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, same rules apply. Get the
September
questions
30.
there if you want to know, and we can have a full-fledged discussion in 30 days. All right, final one, council to discuss zoning code text amendment regarding home occupations. I did have some discussion with the chair about this one. Her request, she's talking to somebody else, I want to make sure she hears me. Debbie and I discussed this, and I think one of the things, and I fully understand it, these are pretty complex issues, pushing this stuff on a committee, especially when there are others going on. The request is essentially, let's table this one until we figure out where we're going with these other three, and I think that makes good sense. I support that, especially from the chair of that committee. Does anybody disagree with that?
I disagree with that. I think there's a couple of things in that that are very important to address. So if we had talked about this coming back to committee again, so maybe it could come back to committee. If Debbie could schedule a meeting soon, it'd come back to committee, we'd pull those couple things out and get those things
Okay,
worked
so
through.
to Watt's point, you said that you wanted to give planning staff plenty of time. So if it goes in, comments go in by September 30th, then I did hear someone say to have a meeting within 30 days. Is that what?
You talking about another
A month from
planning and
now.
zoning committee?
Yeah.
Would
There
that
are-
be one meeting?
My understanding is there's other items that have been referred to the Planning and Zoning Committee, haven't there? Isn't there 3 other items? I think,
It was
Debbie,
a
I think
couple
you're
of
the,
items.
you're
I
the.
mean, I just heard somebody say that. I'm just trying to clarify. Just trying to clarify when
My
you
understanding was
would like.
it was coming back to council, you know, and I didn't mention this in my comments, since we're still talking about this, I'm going to mention it. All through our strategic plan, we talk about getting the public, the community involved and giving us input. This is an issue that we probably should allow those that would be affected by this to give us their opinion on what should happen with their property. Instead of us speaking for them, let's allow them to speak for themselves, just like it was done tonight by one of our citizens. So maybe that could have a little bit of impact ultimately on what you feel comfortable voting for, whether, like I said earlier, are you for the rights of the citizens? Do you want to protect rural land, or do you want to come up with some kind of hybrid model between AGC and RUD?
Well, I think what we're talking about right now, we're only talking about the home occupation issue.
I'm aware.
And so what concerned me is that I watched the video, and it seemed to be, there was real misunderstanding. I know it was me who, everybody thought I was the one that referred that to the committee. And so not even understanding what is the specific charge to the committee, that's what I heard the comments from you all.
So who did refer to the committee? Because I didn't know it was coming till we got to
You
the
weren't here.
It was referred back in March, and it was attributed to me as the reason, but this had to do with, remember the gentleman who came, and I think the position that had come, I think this is when David was still here. The position was, if you have anything in he had a garage, and he was working on a couple of things in his garage, and the comment was, if you do anything in your garage that in any way connects to maybe it being commercial, that makes your whole property commercial. That was the comment that I heard lots of council members have a concern with, not the home occupation issue itself. It was the determination of the general commercial. So given that y'all didn't understand why I referred it, that was why I referred it. It wasn't just to open that whole thing up and take a look at that. I just think we've got 3 big issues right here. I think the chair of that committee has said, let's get through these things, and I can't argue with that. I mean, I think let's get through these 3 things. Let's make some progress on those 3, and we'll come back to that one, since we don't even have an articulated direction.
So the 4th one you defer, you would recommend, or
Defer it.
for second?
Okay, so,
We're not voting on anything.
yeah, we had,
The number one thing in the top thing listed on home occupations with dog breeding. I think that needs to be addressed by this council. People have been coming here for the last few meetings talking about this. Home breeding, it's an occupation of sorts, but I think it needs to be discussed by this council. So if we don't do anything else but pull that out and look at that. The second thing is, when we talked about the measurements of a lot, one of the issues in Lake Wiley, and I don't mean in Lake Wiley, but I mean on Lake Wiley, it affects anybody that lives on the lake who's wanting to put a building or a garage on their property. They have to put it in the backyard, which is lakefront in most cases. And so we wanted the admin to have some discretion in telling someone that, hey, you don't have to put this garage out in the front of your yard. Or a lot of times they've got a lot of property on their front door side, and they don't have a lot of property because they've built up to the buffer line from the lake. So we just wanted to have some discretion, because people are having to go to the zoning board of appeals, pay $750 for people to say, yeah, it makes sense that you put it here and not between your house and the lake. And so those two things need to be addressed.
I want to piggyback up on what you just said, and that is, so I'm not in disagreement personally on the dog breeders, because I think that's a bigger issue. But think about this. When annexation stops and the footprint of unincorporated York County remains the same from that point forward, we begin to operate like a municipality. So it seems to me, you apply forward thinking and you think, it's probably time for us to start talking about a business license, nominal fee, whatever it's going to be, so you begin to identify all businesses to include the dog breeder.
Well, good luck with the business license fee, because I've been screaming that for.
All right, we're
but
getting
you're
way
gonna-
off track
We've been
here.
that for a long
The issue
time.
we're talking about right now, y'all, is the home
You're gonna have
occupation.
businesses in the county eventually.
I think that question you raised, Allison,
So you might as well get started now.
you mixed a couple of them, goes back up to the
Well, let's do
number
it.
5.
You want to do it?
But with respect to the home occupation, we're going to table that until we finish these. All right, committee and other reports. Finance and Operations Committee meeting, Chairwoman Allison Love.
So we met this afternoon just for a couple of minutes. Present were Councilman Adkins and Audette. And we approved the minutes from the September 3rd Finance and Operations Committee meeting. We also approved the recommendation for District 2 and District 3 discretionary funds, each $1,000 to Clover Rotary Club, and that is for their Veterans Day Heroes Luncheon.
Thank you, ma'am. We do not have any citizen concerns tonight. Do we have any council member new non-agenda comments before executive session?
Yep. Oh, I thought I was bidding on a storage unit. In our last committee meeting, I was unaware that we've started audio and videotaping committee meetings. I have no problem with the audio being recorded, but if we're in a committee meeting on HECL, just because we have recording capabilities, I don't think we need to record, because a lot of times we're coming there for whether people getting off work, we're probably not going to be dressed up. It's a more relaxed type meeting. I don't recall us voting to record video. Everybody wants to do the audio. I think audio is fine, but I don't think we need to be videoing committee meetings, because we don't video F&O. This is the first I've heard of it, and I'm here to voice my displeasure of not wanting to allow videos at committee meetings, because those are a little more relaxed time. It's not, we're not dressing up to come to committee meetings, and I don't want to be on video in my yard work clothes if that's what I happen to be out doing before I come to a committee meeting. A lot of times I come to these meetings when I get off work, but I don't have the decency to put on a shirt, tie, whatever to look decent on camera when I know it's going to be on camera. But committee meetings, I think audio serves the same transparency purposes over video. So that's my question. That's my comment for that part. And the other part is, with the holidays and everything coming up, and we talked about roads and traffic and all, we really need to get some traffic engineers throughout York County to help synchronize the traveling patterns during the holidays, because it's a nightmare trying to get places. All the cars on the road, you go from one light to the next light, it's going to stop you. Our lights and patterns need to be synchronized by a traffic engineer to keep traffic flowing, because it's miserable. And it's probably going to be like that on a norm now, since we have so many people here, but definitely during the holidays, it's a killer to go from one light stop at the next light, stop at the next light. We need to get some traffic engineers in here that's gonna synchronize our traffic, flow of traffic, and I think that will help make our roads safer, make them better, and it's a lot more enjoyable to travel, definitely coming up with the holidays coming up. So we really need to see if we can get some people in here to do that for us.
For what it's worth, I'm on the RFATS committee with Tom and Christie, and I brought this question up too, and it's the software, but then it's also the vehicles. So you can actually control, the lights can automatically control themselves to change, but if you have a 1970 truck or a 68 Corvette on the road that doesn't have Bluetooth technology, doesn't have the technology in it, that it's invalid data. So it's expensive to update the software in the lens on the stoplights. It's expensive, and then you've got misrepresentation of vehicles that don't have the technology in them that's required to run that technology, is what was explained to me.
I hope they didn't give you that excuse for the Lake Wylie area, because there are not that many old cars, and those lights are, so they definitely need to be looked at.
Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm just explaining the reason why. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
I'm
yes
just
or
saying,
no.
I'm not sure that reason applies to us.
All right, y'all, any other council member non-agenda?
Yeah. When Bump brought up about traffic, one of my friends was recently hit on tractor pulling the hay rake. And I'd like to urge everybody, a lot of us are moving around the fields, which even when we ain't, if we just going to feed cows or whatever, don't think that you can pass 100 horsepower tractors and driving erratically. Just pay attention, because it could have ended up a lot worse than what it did.
One real quick. So once a month, we continue our NAMI meetings, which is our mental health organization meetings. One of the things that we have subcommittees on is identifying suicide prevention, identifying in younger people and older people too. So there is a series of, there would be training videos and documents that we have been supplied. So I do want to talk with Greg and possibly make this accessible from our website for the public to see this, so they can help, if they do see situations, it would help them identify situations. And I have the information, so I can get it over to you. But that would be it for me, yeah.
Madam Chair, I mentioned tonight that Rick Lee received the Order of the Palmetto about 5 months ago, and Kerwood Chapel just recently received that honor as well from the governor of South Carolina, the Order of the Palmetto. And I'll share with you, obviously, I just joined council 18 months ago, so it's like some of you, I never had a chance to serve with Kerwood Chapel. But I did have one interaction with Kerwood, and for him receiving the Order of the Palmetto, obviously he's done some significant things as a citizen here in South Carolina. But I'll tell you one thing he did for me. I didn't know Kerwood. When my brother died 11 years ago, my younger brother died 11 years ago, he wanted to be taken to the church in a caisson, pulled by horses. So I went out looking for a caisson, and I couldn't find one. And someone said, well, if there's a caisson to be had in York County, Kerwood Chapel, no, call Kerwood Chapel. So I called Kerwood Chapel. He didn't know me from Adam, and he didn't have one, but he found a caisson, and he paid for it. He wouldn't let me pay him. He paid for that caisson for my brother's funeral. And I've thought a lot about him since then. Some of you served with him. Like I said, I didn't. But obviously, he's done enough in his lifetime to be given the honor bestowed upon citizens that have done significant things. And he was a fellow council member with, I guess, Christie, you and Bump?
Actually, I'm in his seat.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm
Gotcha.
glad that you mentioned that. That was the one thing I was going to comment on. It was confidential, and it was a surprise for a long time, but I was privileged to be able to write a letter of support. To me, there's nobody who deserves it more than Dr. Chapel. If you go watch and see the things that he did, this is a gentleman who loved his people, and he had a photographic memory. Folks don't know that. He could remember more about my family than I can remember about my own, and he did that with everybody in the community. And it straddled over into Chester. And so it's the first time that I think the governor actually came to the front porch, came to him because he knew him. But there are things that, you think about all the time that we spend doing up here, but Dr. Chapel, he actually went and picked up carcass. When somebody wouldn't come pick up a dead carcass off the road, he would take his car and put him in his trunk and go do that. He would use his tractor to dig ditches for people when government was slow. I mean, everybody I know that I meet in my district and beyond has a story. Not, they don't just know him, but they have a story like you to tell about that. And I think it is a reminder of, you know, I know that we all are very passionate sitting up here about what we do and we care about folks. And I could go on and on, but I was very privileged to be able to write that, be a part of that. So
Yep. York
I
County is a
think
better place because of people like
we have
Rick
good
and
people.
Kerwood.
Any other non-agenda comments before executive session? No. All right.
All right, so we've got a few things for executive session. First one, receipt of legal advice, legal litigation update. Next is personal matter, assistant county manager. And the third is receipt of legal advice, contractual matter, Project Freedom 1, Project Freedom 2.
Do we need a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will move into executive session. we're out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have any motions?
Yeah, one motion here. Motion to approve a full-time employee in the order to create an additional assistant county manager position.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.